the Jet Setting Wealth Advisory Podcast, where your financial journey takes flight with David T.U. As an airline pilot and financial expert, David merges the aviation industry and wealth management to help you navigate today's complex financial skies. Each episode features expert insight, blending personal stories with essential financial strategies. We ask that you fasten your seatbelts and sit back as we prepare for takeoff. Our destination, your financial empowerment.
Hello, and welcome to Jet Setting Wealth Advisory Podcast. I'm your host, David T.U. And today we're thrilled to welcome Larry Morales as our guest. Larry is the visionary founder and owner of Skywater Group based in Fort Lauderdale. His conglomerate spans across high-value asset trades, including aircraft with Skywater Jets, yachts with Skywater Yachts, and real estate with Skywater Estates. Further supported by Skywater Exchange for asset trades. Larry brings a multifaceted expertise as a licensed realtor, a yacht broker, and a professional pilot for both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. His mission through Skywater Group is to offer seamless brokerage service, emphasizing the priceless value of relationships to enhance client success across diverse industries. So welcome to my show, Larry.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, David.
Yeah, you bet. So very interesting. And just for the viewers and listeners that are on this, Larry and I go way back. We are not only colleagues for one of the major airlines that we both fly for, but we are also each other's clients. I have purchased real estate assets from Larry on a couple of different occasions. And also, Larry is a wealth management client of mine. So knowing now that we've mentioned that, let's get started with some of the questions that I think a lot of people are going to want to know. So Larry, can you tell us about the journey that led you to the founding of the Skywater Group?
Well, when I was young, I was flying corporate jets, and I had a boss that was very mentor, inspirational to myself. He was an airline captain for U.S. Air, and I was flying corporate jets that he managed. And I was like, wow, man, this is really, really impressive that he can do both. And it seemed that I've got this edge of or interest of business, seeing the environment of the corporate aviation world. And so I took it upon myself to get educated in the corporate aviation function, let's call it, at University of Virginia Darden School of Business. It was like a 2-week course, actually. I was the young kid there amongst other major Fortune 100 flight departments. And what that event occurred was not only educational, but I caught myself finding myself interested in business. I knew my heart was in aviation as a young child. But then, when I say young child, the 20s. I guess it's young child now. But back when I was in my 20s, exactly. It's different now, that's for sure. I also got very interested in the business world, where I was not only interested in flying in my heart, but in my brain. I felt I was an entrepreneur and I needed to exercise it. So when I got on with a major airline, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I decided, I said, I'm going to get into selling corporate aircraft. It was very difficult, it was challenging, but I knew the only person that's going to be able to do this is myself. There's no school for aircraft brokering, so I immersed myself into it. I pushed myself into it. I spread my network out amongst other brokers, where I started off, and to actually wealth advisors like yourself, because they knew a lot of people that in their networks. And then fast forward a little bit, I started selling some aircraft, and they were smaller aircraft. We weren't quite in the jet phase yet, but I did sell a client's plane one time. This was the catalyst of the Skywater Group. He was so happy with me selling his aircraft that immediately he turns around, because he was leaving out of town. He goes, "I want you to sell my house." I said, "Well, I don't have a real estate license. I need to go get a license. And he goes, well, go get your license. And I said, well, I don't know how to do the process. Let me go find your realtor. And he looks at me and he goes, Larry, I want you to do the business, not anybody else. And I said, I have to go get my license. Go get your license. I'll hold my listing off and wait for you to come back. I go, why are you doing this? He goes, it's not necessarily about what you know of the business. It's also the relationships. He's like, my value with you is I can find any realtor out there. There's a dime a dozen out there. However, you know how I do business, and that's why I want you. Go get your license. Call me when you're done. He was my first listing. Sold his got his house under contract in 4 days. It was in the peak of the market. It was very good, but he was so happy, trying to shine an apple or anything, that it was good timing and luck was driven on that. But he said, okay, come to the garage. He had 2 Ferraris in there. He's like, I want you to sell my Ferraris. And I'm like, hey, I'm not a walking eBay right now. So that was a catalyst. And I asked him later, I said, I asked him, I go, well, how come you're driven to have me do this business? And I didn't really see myself walking into real estate. He goes, I see how you do business. You listen, you pay attention, and you're not of the big corporate like Remax and Caldwell Banker that you suffocate me in paperwork and rules and your own policies in your company. You know how I do individual business. So that was basically the birth of the Skywater Group. I realized from then on that it's about relationships, who you know in the relationships. Yes, there is a knowledge curve where you have to know what you're doing, have to know about the transaction, and that gets taught not only in classes but also in experience from good things to bad things. You learn off of your what works for you and what doesn't work for you over time. So then my real estate business got very busy. Not everybody owns a jet, but everybody is sleeping under a roof. So the real estate business,
not everybody really has a jet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a jet, but everybody are practically homeowners that we deal with. So
yes. Exactly. Yeah. So just the percentages and the numbers. All of a sudden, I started getting to know other people in the industry and friends. And quite honestly, I don't need to advertise my business to get the business. It's word of mouth. Brokerage is a word of mouth business because I feel most of it is the relationship side. People know, I know Larry Morales. I know David Yu. I am doing business with David Yu and I'm doing business with Larry Morales because of who they are. And their skill, not only their skill sets, is their ethics, their business acumen, how they think, and also, doctors, or there's a doctor term, but your bedside manner. How do you handle situations? Are you aggressive? Are you soft? Are you smart about it? Are you wise about it? So I think there's a level of human dynamic behind the business that creates value to wanting to do business with them. So we all get educated from the same sources in the real estate business, but eventually it goes with experience and human dynamic. And finally, I knew at some point, because of the circles of aircraft and high net worth people and selling homes on the water, I needed to expand one more notch, and that's when Skywater Yachts was birthed. That's a little bit newer part of my group. I brought on a partner in the past who helped me out with the big boats. I deal mostly with the middle and smaller boats, from mid-range to smaller, and I carry the same ethics and the same intellect and business acumen through all 3 divisions, where I pass through the value. The value of all this is the relationship of being able to say, capture my abilities and skill sets and interpersonal dynamics with usually the same customers. Sometimes they recycle. A gentleman wants to buy a house in the water, and he's like, hey, since you sell boats, help me find a boat because I like how you do business. Just like my first customer, he said, thank you for selling my airplane. Now I want you to sell my house. 2 different skill sets, but a common business acumen and human dynamic that the customer wants.
The core relationship. Yeah, I call it the core relationship. And
correct.
You were able to maintain and keep that core relationship tight and be able to provide value add.
Exactly.
Would that be about right?
Correct.
So what inspired you to bring this whole aircraft sales, this yacht sales, real estate, and this new asset trading under one umbrella? How did you end up putting all of that together?
Well, good question. You, there's two different questions in there. Like, you started with inspired, and then you get into how do I put it together. And those do correlate, and it's a good question. Inspired, I would compare it to someone that's working out in the gym. Someone that's working out in the gym is doing it for their health and exercise, and maybe for their mental well-being. And then they see someone working in the CrossFit gym. They're like, I want to try that too. So they go to the CrossFit gym. Then they see someone doing Tough Mudder or one of these little things. Then so they keep escalating, going, I like this. I like this. This is working. This is better for me. And this is exciting. I want to try something different, but in the same realm. That's kind of inspiring to me. I could have just stayed selling aircraft, but I got kind of thrusted into the real estate gym, let's call it. And now I'm doing the real estate CrossFit and the competition. It just builds off of itself. And I have actually enjoyed the dynamic of negotiations and sales. How I put it together, I knew I needed to brand something because I needed to convey to people that I have 3 skill sets. And I needed to do it.
What are they?
Oh, well, the aircraft brokerage. Yes. So that's the group. So we have the group, and then we have Skywater Jets, which was my aircraft sales abilities, skill sets, and Skywater Estates was my real estate skill sets. Skywater Yachts was my yacht brokerage skill set. So I decided to brand it as Skywater and put it under the umbrella of the Skywater group. They are different entities. It's mainly a branding umbrella of Skywater, just like, Skywater Yachts. Oh yeah, they also do real estate and they do aircraft. But I do have salespeople that help me in each division of their specific skill sets.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to your business strategy. What type of strategy or strategies have been successful to your success in catering to such a diverse, high-end, potentially high-end and ultra high-end market?
Yes, good question. There's 2 successes in this. This is a success for the individual business and success for the client. For the client, it starts off with the client always. If you're doing a good job for the client, they'll bring you more business naturally because you did a good job. That's where I found myself creating the special skill set that I've had being able to do an excellent job on each transaction. I've almost never had a problem, knock on wood. However, it's very seamless when you have the ability to talk and listen to your client, and your client has certain desires, but he's also willing to listen to you.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to share that was a very, very important piece of advice, especially in my industry, was a CEO of a large company. I met with him, and I was young, and I was trying to convince him to buy a jet, and he knew what he wanted or didn't want, but he was kind of like smelling my aura of entrepreneurship. So he was kind of coaching and mentoring me. And I asked him a question, and I go, what piece of advice can you give me? Just one good solid piece of advice you can give me for my future of entrepreneurship. He goes, Larry, do not accept every single client that falls in front of your face. Also be able to choose your clients. You can't take everybody. Absolutely. And I know you want everybody, but there's some clients you're just not going to want to have as for business, and you have to have the ability to say, I'm sorry, I can't do business with you. So I thought that was pretty good.
I completely understand. And being in the wealth management business, I know that some people, it's basically impossible to satisfy them and to make them happy, regardless of what the outcome is. So
correct.
I think that is a fantastic piece of advice that you were given. I learned it the hard way, but it's fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit more, or tell us all a little bit more about this Skywater exchange? A little bit more about that.
Yes, Skywater Exchange is more. It's not an operation of the Skywater Group per se. It's more of a branding concept. Um, because I was swimming in the circles of aircraft, real estate, and yachts, I frequently, naturally, came across people who said, "Hey, I've got a boat here that I'd like to trade for a condominium in Miami. I've got a plane that I would trade for any real estate investment property."
Mm-hmm.
And that naturally spawned itself into new business. It was interesting because they were so desperate to do a trade that the incentives were quite um, incentivizing, let's call it, to be able to pursue it. Very, very, very difficult to do an actual exchange because you need to match not only asset values but motivations. That's the key to doing an exchange or a trade. Is both need to be equally motivated to try to get to a trade. Everybody wants money. To sell a house, you just want your money. To buy the house, that buyer knows he needs to bring money. But to have a $10 million jet and a $5 million piece of investment property, how do you trade those two assets when they're unequal value? So there may be cash involved. Hey, I've got this other piece of property, and sometimes it does work very well, but it can be challenging. But I've presented that as options to people. I asked, but the people that are high net worth or unique investment property. I've had someone call me to say they wanted to trade a very expensive emerald for an island in the Bahamas. That is very unique.
I was actually going to ask you if you could give an example, and you just did, so it's perfect.
Well, that's an extreme example. I did accomplish a trade that was unique. A person had real estate in California, investment property, that they traded for a very nice luxury home in Dominica, in the Caribbean. And that ended up being a trade because they matched motivations and desires. It was complicated, but eventually was able to prevail. So
fantastic. These type of asset exchanges, the Skywater exchange, I would say probably incrementally it's much more difficult than just a normal straight cash transaction. Would you concur with that?
Very. We have to do appraisals, valuations, surveys, and let's say, for example, in my story, I wasn't able to do the emerald exchange for an island, but let's assume I did find someone that was interested. Well, that person, I'd have to go through the due diligence of finding a jewelry expert and to be able to get it appraised and valuated and find its validity, its commodity certificates that may come with it. Then the island part of it, it's a foreign nation. So then you got to deal with and it gets quite complicated. And the fees are fairly high, but it can be quite successful based on both motivations. So it can be done. It can be done.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. Very exciting, actually, this concept. So you're dealing on that high-end market. What are some of the biggest trends you're seeing in the luxury market, especially in the aircraft and yacht sales?
Okay, trends. A lot different than it was when I started about 15, 16 years ago.
Share with us what you see.
Yes. More recently, I saw this pop up on the MLS for the first time. I had somebody ask me. I said I was selling their house down in Fort Lauderdale, and I said, okay, they was aware I did exchange, and he wanted to move somewhere else. I'm like, well, maybe we can find a house that you can trade with somewhere. And he's like, oh, you know what? I trade for cryptocurrency. And I'm like, what? It set me back. I was very shocked to hear that. And
Sure.
yeah, because he's big into cryptocurrency. He goes, yeah, if someone wants to give me Bitcoin or something, I'd be happy to entertain it. Let's call it.
Okay.
So I was surprised when I went to the MLS to actually check. There is an option you can actually click to broadcast your desire on the MLS that my client is willing to trade for cryptocurrency, which
Wow.
I thought was quite impressive. I actually had to see it to believe it, and I never thought I'd actually get that far because I was trying to figure out a way, how do I advertise that without looking like someone one off? But the MLS, believe it or not, the National Association of Realtors has acknowledged that that is a form of currency.
Mhm.
And to someone, it could be valuable, like gold. If I had a giant box of gold worth $2 million, and a guy says, yeah, I'll take that gold, give it to me, and I'll give you my house. That's a commodity. So cryptocurrency, I think, is an interesting new discussion that's going to be going further in a trend in this industry.
Absolutely. And Larry, this is several years ago when you first brought up cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
You were actually the first client that had asked on the wealth management side regarding cryptocurrency. I knew very little at the time, but subsequently, I now have my designation in the CBDA,
Right.
Certified Blockchain and Digital Assets now. And
Right.
I think it is a asset class that is going to be with us for the long run. This is not something that we're dabbling in, but in fact,
It was actually that client, that specific client I was just giving you an example on, that got me into learning more about it, because I couldn't believe he was willing to get rid of his, it was close to $1 million home for Bitcoin. And I got, what? Just the thought of you wanting and willing to do that, I want to hear more about this.
sure.
So he was one of the catalysts that got me started thinking about it. And I go, wow, this is pretty impressive stuff. When you're willing to give up your home for a digital something that you can't physically touch, it's pretty
tangible.
impressive.
Sure.
Yes.
So you're mentioning your clients and some of the people that you have served and have experiences in dealing transactions. So how does the Skywater Group create a personalized experience for the clients that you serve, especially when they're dealing in the high value asset transactions, like boats, yachts, aircrafts, real estate?
Correct. I keep up with the times. But one thing I've learned most importantly is communication. As difficult as it can be, being saturated with the electronic world of texting and emails, you just have to keep up with it. These days, we don't send letters anymore. Phone calls are actually getting less and less. It's either via email or text, because you just want a quick answer. So what I've learned with clients is I try to get a feel for how they want to communicate, because I feel that's critical to every transaction. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be selling the Taj Mahal. You could be selling an RV. You got to be able to talk to the client. And some clients don't like texting. I've had a few that just concede to me, hey, I'm old school. When you want to talk to me, give me a phone call. So I just got to adapt to it. But I would say 90% love the e-signature. They don't want to pull out their pen to ink. They want to just be done with a digital signature. They text me what you think. I do virtual walkthroughs, either a boat, airplane, or real estate. And they're like, hey, I'm out of town. And I'll say, I can go do it for you. And we'll just walk and talk around the property. And you can make the best assessment as you want via the FaceTime. And then get back to me and maybe coming back to see the asset we're looking at. So I think keeping up with the technology is very important. And outside of the human element that we discussed earlier.
It sounds like you also provide white glove service, being that you are
willing
to go and do a virtual tour, possibly even live, with the people that you're doing the transaction with. So would that be correct?
Yes, and even more so, I met a client in Switzerland at the Pilatus factory to get a tour of the factory and to handhold them around so he can ask me questions, or I could liaise with the factory. It's an example of going up and beyond the white glove service you're talking about. But yes.
Fantastic. So, do you have a favorite story or an experience that with a client that you have that stands out that you would like to share with us?
Ooh, boy, I got many. I don't. Sometimes
pick a good one.
Wow. Well, actually, to be honest with you, my favorite story is the story I told you at the beginning is getting how I got into this business because of who I am. There's stories. I have stories in there that have been fun and sporty, and I had one client. I guess this was kind of a fun one. I was selling a famous race car driver's aircraft, and the buyer's representative was sitting in the airplane, and we were looking at it, and then looked out the window and goes, "That airplane right next to it, that has the same paint job, same color scheme to this airplane. Is this also the other?" He goes, "Yes, it's the other owner's plane." And then she goes, is he willing to sell that plane also?" And then I looked at the director of operations and I said, and he made a phone call right in front of me. And he said, yes. And they ended up buying both airplanes nearly in front of me. So I thought,
just curious what kind of airplane those are.
Gulfstreams.
Oh, yep. Okay.
Yep.
So they're the high end of the high end in world private jets.
Yes.
So in terms of financial perspectives, for those that are looking to invest or purchase a high-end luxury asset, what should the potential prospects or the client that you're working with consider before diving into these type of acquisitions?
Great question. The three divisions that I am working with very intently on have separate investment profiles. I'll start off with the worst one, boats. It's no secret. Nobody made millions and millions and millions of dollars in boats unless you're the boat manufacturer and you are cranking out boats. So some have found themselves successful in the charter business, and that's limited and where you're going to be in a micro demographic of the Bahamas or South Florida. But I discourage that.
Okay.
And the aviation and aircraft is a little bit different, how should I say, valuation or the value of what can I get out of buying a $10 million jet. Without getting into the deep analytics, buyers either want to buy the jet because they want one. Buyers want to get a jet because they would like to charter it out and be able to get some revenue. Is it a smart revenue stream? Unless you own a sizable charter operation, then possibly. But rarely you see a charter operator owning their own jets. Finally, this is not to bounce back, to come forward. What I learned from going to that school at University of Virginia, Darden Business School, of managing the corporate aviation function, I learned a lot about the reasons, the monetary reasons why high net worth people purchase aircraft for their own tax purposes, for their own value of time saved. There's functionality to the aircraft to get to a meeting very quickly. There's a lot of intangible value to acquiring an aircraft. We don't use the word investing so much unless you are a professed flipper, let's call it, on jets. Like you say, oh, I could buy that jet at wholesale, put a new paint job and flip it out. But you don't see the CEO of Coca-Cola doing that. It's CEO of Coca-Cola goes to his flight department and says, I need basically, no, the CEO of Coca-Cola tells the CFO, go talk to the flight department and see if it's worth to purchase a new aircraft or a larger aircraft and determine to me we can carry more people. I can get to places that I'm not so restricted with my smaller jet, and incorporate a value to that I can accomplish the mission for my meeting. And then in turn, the CFO will determine it could be worth it, because he's also looking at the tax advantages of being able to depreciate, to write off the flight department. And if all the holes of the equation get plugged, it could be quite an option for flight departments. So let's call a spade a spade. Why does Gulfstream exist? Why does Bombardier exist? Embraer exist? All because there's a high demand for corporate jets, because people are willing to purchase expensive aircraft and operate them because there's a value somewhere in its operation.
So let's continue on with this. What role do you think financial planning plays in your business and that of the business of your clients, particularly in this type of high value asset transactions?
Yes, it's interesting. The decision-making process of, and it varies within category, because I see high net worth people thinking a little different than the not so high net worth people that are looking to buy a house for their own personal accord. I found the aircraft purchasers to have more of an investing acumen. Where do I get value out of this? And that's where they dive into this. The financial planning side of this really comes from the CFO, because he'll go to the CFO and say, it's funny. They'll tell him, can I afford this? And I'll be honest with you, and most CFOs do not like the flight department. It's just a money stream. But to call an opportunity, they will concede. I can write it off, I can depreciate it, and save taxes. And that's where the CFOs can interestingly support the acquisition of a jet when the CEO presses them and saying, can we take the tax savings of this and that monetary savings be a value to what we're doing? And that's exactly where it would be.
Fantastic, which leads me right to the next question, which is, how does owning these high value assets like a jet or a yacht impact tax planning? Are there any specific strategies that you might consider or recommend?
Well, without getting into details, this is where we start creeping towards a line of accounting and your specialty, which my skill sets creep close to that, but then I fall short of it. I understand that accelerated depreciation and bonus depreciation, especially on aircraft, are quite attractive. When we got into the bonus depreciation of a new jet, depreciation of new jets, when I can't remember, I feel like it was about 7 or so years ago, where you could write off the whole expense of the jet in the first year.
That's right.
And you buy a $30 million jet and be able to write off $30 million in the first year. It's attractive. It's attractive.
Absolutely.
However, one thing I do know is you have to have a vision of owning the jet over a good period of time, not a long period of time. Because if you sell that jet in a high demand market, 3 years later, you've written off the whole aircraft in depreciation, all of it. There's going to be a gain, a large gain, and you're going to have to evaluate whether paying that capital gains is worth the savings you had when you first did your bonus depreciation. Because if you were to save that out, accelerate that, be careful. If you were to keep the aircraft over, let's say, 10 years, very, very rarely aircraft value increases. It generally decreases. It's not a dump. It's not like real estate where it can be a little bit of this, because not many people, there aren't as many aircraft available as there are homes. But owning a plane does have a depreciation drag going down, a decline, let's call it. So owning the plane over a longer period of time may lessen the capital gains tax. So you should be a little bit visionary about your airplane. I wouldn't be upgrading it every year because you're going to be constantly be paying for that capital gains tax if you depreciate it all.
Understand. You're talking about bonus depreciation, accelerated depreciation, followed by when you end up selling the airplane, there is that recapture of all the depreciation. So I completely understand that. So obviously, a model has to be put in place to get an idea of what the ultimate consequences for a full cycle ownership of one of these high-end, expensive luxury asset. So looking ahead, Larry, at Skywater innovations in the future, what's on the horizon with Skywater Group? What is Skywater Group embracing in terms of technologies and innovation in the luxury market?
Yes, good question. Lots of different things happening. I'm seeing, and we are trying to utilize is being able to use the technology that is available for us, especially social media for letting the world know we have somebody's asset to sell, or even utilizing social media to find certain assets. Now, you're not going to find the right Gulfstream 5 for a client if you're going to try to help them buy that type of airplane. It's not going to be on Facebook, Instagram, and those things. Those social media platforms are typically for the home sales, maybe boat sales, but not in the aircraft. So the technology we use, there's like an MLS system for aircraft that we can see behind the scenes. It's actually quite fantastic because it's a company that collects all this data, collates it all together, and you can see every single owner of every single plane on the planet Earth. I mean, it's really fantastic information. And then being able to contact someone directly and say, hey, I can reach out to the flight department and say, hey, I have a customer who wants to buy this Gulfstream 5, buy a Gulfstream 5. Yours is a candidate. We should be selling them. Very difficult to find the owner, telephone number, and email of a boat owner or even a homeowner in some cases. So, now everything's virtually online, and that's the technology we try to use and go after.
Okay, fantastic. What are some of the future developments that may be planned for Skywater Group, and how do you plan to expand or evolve your service offerings moving forward?
Wow. Well, the one division that's going to be seeing a big change is a real estate division. And that's actually going to play a role with yacht brokerage. Talking to people in the yacht brokerage industry, I don't know if your viewers are aware of what happened in the real estate industry, but now we've had a big change with the National Association of Realtors settlement lawsuit regarding buyer's agency representation and commissions, how they work, and it's changed. So we are going to have to adapt to that. We're going to find ourselves, I'm in the midst of registering because everything's so new right now, becoming an accredited buyer's agent. It's actually an accreditation, being able to tell the buyer I've been schooled and educated and taught correctly by the Association of Realtors to be able to represent you correctly and properly for deals going forward. I've heard rumors that because of the NAR settlement, the yacht brokerage industry is going to start going that direction as well because they're quite similar, very similar. Yacht brokerage, ironically, it's a whole other conversation, but is unregulated. There's no brokerage license required. So very careful, lots of exposure on there. And that's why getting into aircraft brokerage is delicate. That's why you really should have a truly experienced aircraft broker because of the unregulated side of that industry.
Understand. So you've been in the business for close to 2 decades. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in running a multifaceted luxury brand service?
Listening to the customer. I think that is. I think that goes with. I could almost go with any business, and more specifically, to answer your question, on the multifaceted is understanding each customer's value to you and your value to them. If there's an imbalance, then one of you two are going to be separating your own ways. So there should be a mutual. And I learned that from the story I first shared with you with my customers. He found value in me, but I didn't understand the value in him to me. But he really valued me. It was more so to me than it was to him. And he pulled the rope to me and said, "Hey, I want you on my team." And I realized, wow, that's valuable. I think that's very important.
And any advice that you would offer to our listeners and viewers that is interested in participating in transactions like luxury assets like jets and yachts and real estate?
Advice. Specifically in aircraft, if you are a buyer or needing to sell your aircraft, very important to get someone that's had their feet in the water of the industry. A lot of fly-by-night brokers are out there. Typically, they'll be chief pilots of flight operations or unvetted type of self-represented brokers. So be careful with that. Real estate, totally different animal. Lots of experienced realtors out there. I think that where the value is, especially with someone like myself, is it's the personal servicing of the transaction, being able to stay on top of it. I've had people choose me over others simply because they know I put more attention to the transaction than a realtor that's with a big company and is on a team, and you're just one little notch in the wheel of 100 other listings, and it's like a general contractor with 15 houses being built. You're waiting for him to show up, or you're trying to get a hold of him. I'm more boutique-ish. I'm more, and I think there's a better value with that, with a person that owns a $15 million jet or a $15 million home or a $15 million boat. You want access to your broker. You need personalized service. You don't want to get the assistant all the time, or, oh, here, talk to this person. You want to talk to the person that you created the relationship. And I think that's very important.
Excellent. Great advice for listeners and viewers. And tell us, how can the people that are watching this and listening to this learn more about Skywater Group and connect with you?
Oh, the best way, I did love conversations. I always tell when I meet someone, I say, please call me anytime. And I call it, I'm not taking this from my trade of flying, because I conceded that I'm from a pilot history. We call it hangar talk. And it's a fun way of saying, we're going to talk in the hangar, just talk. Let's just talk. I've talked to so many people. Some have turned into clients, some just want a conversation and just talk. So if you want to call me, and even email me, but you can reach out to me and call me and ask me any question about any of those three industries. Conversation breeds new topics. Sometimes texting, you don't want to text so much. Emails, you don't want to write so much. Or sometimes a personalized conversation over the phone to start off with is the best way to do it. And I strongly recommend.
And then what is your email address?
Larry@skywatergroup.com. The number to the company is 954-607-4238. And in the meantime, right now, just a quick note, the Skywater Group website is being revamped. So if it's temporarily down, that's why. But feel free to call anytime or email me.
Okay. Thank you for providing us your email for your business, as well as the phone number. And we appreciate you so much for joining us today. And
excellent. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Jet Setting Wealth Advisory Podcast. We're deeply grateful for Larry to have him share his extensive expertise in the realm of high value assets trades and brokerage services across all the luxury brands. I appreciate you joining us today. I'm David Yu, airline pilot, founder and wealth advisor of DTY Wealth Planning Solutions. Remember to please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, keep your financial goals focused and your strategies sharp. Goodbye.
Thank you for flying with us on today's episode of Jet Setting Wealth Advisory. If you enjoyed your journey through the fiscal skies with David T.U., don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and keep your financial knowledge soaring. For more insights and personalized advice, visit us at www.dtywealthplanningsolutions.com and connect with David directly